I will now call to order the study session meeting of March 2nd, 2026. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person City Council meetings in council chambers on the first level of City Hall. Public access to tonight's meeting is also available on the Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel online, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Will the Deputy City Manager please call the roll?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukeman Hiramasa. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Severs.
Here.
Councilmember Kondo.
Here.
Councilmember Roper.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Here.
Councilmember Leidy.
Here. Good job. All right, we have two items for the study session tonight. The first one is the Colorado State Demography Office presentation. State Demographer Neil Marquez will present this item to council. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Can I take this off? I should
Sure.
have asked before. Nice. Okay. Thank you again for having me. My name is Neil Marquez. I am the State Forecast Demographer with the State Demography Office at the Department of Local Affairs, and I'm here to discuss Northglenn's demographic outlook. And just to give you a primer, I am going to start at a very high level, talking about trends, really high level, starting globally, but then zooming into the US and Colorado, just to give important context on what's happening with demographic shifts across the country, and to contextualize how that's different happening within Northglenn and the city municipal area itself. I also want to throw out right now that if you have questions during the presentation, please go ahead and interrupt me. I would love to have a discussion and have this be a back and forth as much as possible. I think while the information is there on the slides, it's just better for us to discuss that then and there, and I don't mind being interrupted at all. I actually really dislike hearing myself talk for 45 minutes straight, so a conversation is very welcome.
I'll look for hands.
So, starting with key population trends, and this is true of Colorado, but generally true across the United States as a whole, informing how we think about changing populations here. First, lower fertility rates. Across the United States and Colorado, and as well as here in the county, we have seen lower fertility rates, and what that means is fewer births as time goes on. This has been happening within Colorado since about 2007, where we're seeing lower fertility rates. Declining births have started happening in about 2015, and this is also true of Adams County and is impacting Northglenn as well. At the same time, we also have population aging. The population who is aged 65 and older in the state, and also true for Adams County as well, 65 and older is the fastest growing population within the state and in the county. And with this is higher rates of mortality as well, equaling more deaths that happen within the state and the county. This combination of factors is leading to slower population growth. Two of the components of population change, births and deaths. When you have fewer births over time, more deaths over time, you're going to have slower population growth, even if that third component of population change, migration, is staying at the same level. So what about migration? Net migration for Colorado and for the county, and again, Northglenn, has been a key component of population growth across the history of the state and county. There is a fun statistic for the state of Colorado that most people in the state of Colorado are born outside of Colorado, and this is a testament to the fact that migration is such an important factor for the historical growth of the state and again for the county. However, recently we have seen some declines in net migration happening across the state and county. There has been some rebounding, but that rebounding comes with caveats, and I will definitely be going into that a lot more. And overall, we're seeing increasing diversity over time happening as well, with minority communities tending to grow at rates faster than the non-Hispanic white population as well, leading to increasing diversity both across the state and the county. And again, just to give you some context and flavor about this fertility rates, that first topic that I was talking about, I mentioned they're on the decline. They're on the decline everywhere across the globe, and that's going to have cascading impacts for Colorado and for the county as well in the form of international migration. In this map here, what I'm showing is a plot of all countries colored in based on whether they are below or above replacement rate. What is replacement fertility rate? It means a rate of 2.1 children per woman, or about the number that you need for a population to grow without net migration. If a country's fertility rate is below 2.1, and I want you to remember that number because we're going to show it again for Colorado and for the county, then in order for that population to continue to grow in the long term, it needs more migrants coming in than leaving. And something that I want to point to here is for most countries, they're in this purple color. They're well below the replacement fertility rate. And even for the countries within, for the United States, which have historically been, let's call them donor migration countries, those Central American, South American countries, many of them too are also below replacement fertility rate. Sort of giving an indication that those historic trends that we expected to the United States that also impact Colorado and this county may not continue to be sustained simply because there isn't enough births or working age population in these countries as well moving forward. This is contributing to slowing population growth overall with less births, right? But also aging of the population. What I'm showing here is a graph of the world population broken down into 3 age groups, 0 to 19, 20 to 64, the traditional working age population, and age 65 plus, traditional retirement age population. And what these are United Nations World Population Prospects estimates on the left-hand side of the dotted line, on the right-hand side population projections. And as you can see, the UN suspects that we have reached basically the peak of 0 to 19-year-olds, that moving forward, we're expecting basically a decline in the 0 to 19 age population globally. At the same time, we're expected continued growth for the 20 to 64, that traditional working age population, but only for the next 20 to 30 years before this too tops off. At the same time, the 65 plus population is expected to continue to grow, and much like the state of Colorado, globally, this is also the fastest growing group. So again, I juxtapose this against the United States now. So digging in and zooming in, and you can see very similar trends. 0 to 19, we're a little bit further along that. We've been declining for about a decade now in this population, the traditional school age population. The 2064, kind of same thing. We're expecting that to continue to grow, but then level off. And then 65 plus, pretty much nowhere but up in this graph as well. And I should say these forecasts come from the US Congressional Budgeting Office, so a federal group that does population projections. This US Census Bureau also produces their own population projections that look very similar to this. But what's happening in the state of Colorado? Where are we going? We know that historically, Colorado has grown faster than the rest of the United States. So there's some different population dynamics that are happening there. We know that right now, Colorado has been growing at a rate that is actually more similar to the rest of the US. That shifted in 2020. Before we were growing much faster, 2020 comes along, the US as a whole starts to decline in its rate, but then shoots back up. Why does it shoot back up? Unprecedented new type of international migration happening within the United States. And this is happening, of course, within Colorado as well, and this is probably something that you're familiar with in the city and the county as well, which we'll definitely talk about. But the degree that it's impacting Colorado is not as large as the degree that it's happening in the US, right? And in addition to this, Colorado is a state that is predominantly driven by domestic migration. What does that mean? It means that growth that comes from people coming from other states rather than from outside of the country directly into Colorado. This is how most of the growth is happening within Colorado. Historically, this is kind of what we expect to happen in the future, this anomalous period of international migration and being directed directly to Colorado is sort of a phenomenon that we think is only temporary given the circumstances and the uniqueness of the kind of international migration that's happened. I'm also showing here population projections, so I should say everything beyond 2024 for our office's purposes is a population projection. There's data limitations, we just don't have everything that we need available to us to make an estimate for 2025, so everything beyond that is a projection. And you can see that we're expecting Colorado to sort of rebound in its growth rate to look more similar in the past than it has in the past in terms of its growth rate, and really separate itself from the growth of the rest of the United States, similar to what we've observed before. There's definitely some downside risk to that, and I don't want to shy away from that, but I might say that we'll leave that conversation towards the end on what some of those downside risks are. So I mentioned that populations can change in a couple of different ways. One way that we like to categorize them is through natural change. Natural change here means births minus deaths, whereas the other side of that is net migration. People coming into the state versus leaving into the county versus leaving, just depending on the geography that you're looking at. Historically, I mentioned Colorado is growing because of its net migration, right? We grow because we have way more people coming in than we have leaving, shown here in the blue. And yes, we are growing because of natural change. It's just not as strong as a factor historically from what we've seen. We also notice that if you look at that gray part of the graph, that it's declining over time. You're seeing population decline in there, and that's because I mentioned before, we're having less births, more deaths during that period, right? And that's what I'm showing here. You can see that births really peaked in that 2007, and then there's some rebounding in 2015, but then decline again. And we think that's going to stabilize over time. In the most recent data that we have from CDPHE, we've seen births actually increase this year, and a slight influx in the increase in the fertility rate during this time. We don't expect a huge rebound, but we think we're at a stabilization point, which is going to lead to stabilization of births. At the same time, population aging is going to continue to happen, and we expect deaths to continue to increase. This year, our office is projecting for the first time that crossover between deaths and births, and that by 2047, that Colorado will be in a state where there are more deaths than births. And at this point, we will need more migrants coming in just to make up for the fact that there will be more deaths than births. To give a comparison point, the Congressional Budgeting Office thinks that this is going to happen in 2031 for the rest of the US, much, much sooner. And to give another comparison point, many states are already here with more deaths than births already. So that 2047 number is still what I think a relatively optimistic number. I mentioned the sort of uniqueness in what's happened with migration for the state of Colorado. Again, on the left-hand side, I'm showing net domestic migration versus net international migration. And domestic migration has been historically that heavy lifter in terms of population growth, but it's really fallen off leading into 2020, but definitely post-2020. And I will say that in 2025, from the Bureau's most recent information that they released less than a month ago, and maybe you've seen reporting on this in the Denver Post and the like, we've actually had more people leaving the state of Colorado than coming in from other states. Where we continue to see growth is international, but that number too has fallen pretty dramatically by more than 70% between 2024 and 2025. So if I had that next data point, it would also fall pretty dramatically, right? So we do know that there is a lot of variation across counties, though, that this is speaking in generalities across Colorado, and I do think that it's important for context because our state tends to grow along very similar lines, but there are outliers. And here I'm showing population change by magnitude, by persons over a 10-year period. And you can see, and I'm going to focus on Adams County. I know that Northglenn is split over 2 counties, but most of it was in with Adams County, so I'm going to focus on that, is part of that red outlier in terms of strong population growth. And this is something that we think is probably going to continue moving forward. And I want to get into the reasons why that is. But our forecast, which begins at that first dot, we're expecting almost similar growth to what we've seen in the past in terms of number. That's going to lead to a slower growth rate over time, just because the same number leads to a smaller growth rate over time. But this is relatively optimistic, and I do want to, again, be very transparent that this too is different than what we forecasted in the past. That when last year, if I was making this presentation and we talk about the vintage 23, what we forecasted using 2023 as our latest data, Adams County's projection was more optimistic, and we have toned that down. This toning down that's happened is something that we've applied across Colorado as a whole that's mostly come from the fact that we've now seen 3 to 4 years of slower migration to the state as a whole. This is going to just impact all counties, right? This is just less people that we have to work with in terms of the population. So most of the counties across the state, save for maybe one or two, saw lower forecasts than what we had previously forecasted, and some saw much, much lower. I would say Adams is more typical of what we have done for the adjustments, and so there's nothing that was particularly picked out except we're just seeing less people within the state of Colorado. How has Adams grown over time? Historically, Adams has grown much faster than Colorado as a whole, but this began to shift in the 2010s, and we've seen more on par growth between Adams and Colorado. You can kind of see that line almost completely disappear. You can only see like one line, and it's because that growth rate had become similar. But when that international migration spike happened within 2020, we saw a big increase in the county's population overall, right? And that's not a coincidence, and we can dig into that. But again, I want to break this down in terms of natural change and net migration. And the biggest thing that I hope pops up to you in this graph here is that natural change is very high for the county. For population growth here, we are expecting natural change to persist through the forecast period. There's no crossover where births are lower than deaths. Why is that? There's a couple of reasons. One of them is because Adams County has a higher fertility rate than Colorado as a state as a whole. The other one is because Adams County is younger than the rest of Colorado as a whole. The combination of those factors means less deaths, more births. And so even though births are on the decline for Adams County and have been, again, for the past 10 years, these higher fertility rates, this younger population is leading to more growth from that natural change factor. And so it's less dependent on net migration, which puts Adams County in a little better place when we're making our projections. Better, I'm saying, in terms of population growth. I should say that we don't want to put a value system on population growth. This is simply the trends that we see moving forward, that we're not here to put a value on whether population growth fast or slow or population decline is a good thing. We're just here to inform planning. Looking back at natural to net migration in this case, right, you can see that 2022, 3, and 4, those last 3 lines right before the dotted line, that vertical dotted line, increasing pretty dramatically, and then we forecast, and now it's a big drop-off. Why that big drop-off? Why are we reversing this trajectory? This is our office saying that we think migration is going to fall off very strongly for the county. Well, we've done this for the state as a whole overall, but I will say that Adams County was particularly impacted in this regard, in that drop-off. And it's because of this growth that's been happening within the county, predominantly because of international migration. Again, historically, just like the whole of Colorado, Adams County has grown predominantly because of domestic migration, although there is a little bit more of international migration, which you see in a higher proportion foreign-born population across the county. But mostly domestic migration, and then in the beginning with 2022, you see a big jump in international migration, mostly from Central American countries, South American countries, contributing to population growth here. And yes, domestic migration is still positive as well, but by far the biggest factor here is this international migration. And we already seen a lot of evidence of this falling down in 2025. Some of it with economic conditions, some of this with the current administration cracking down more on the types of migration that happen internationally. So our forecast reflects that. Yeah.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So sorry, just in regards to the Adams County low fertility rates and sort of the slides 18 and 19 you were talking about.
I'm going the wrong way. Sorry.
So a rather sad statistic that I think most of us on the dais are aware of is that Adams County also has a very high infant mortality rate. Is that factored into this as well, like in regards to the birth versus how many people make it to adulthood?
Yes, and so relative to the rest of the state, does have a higher child infant mortality rate. I will say that that is still a relatively small portion of the total deaths overall. I'm not trying to downplay that in that regard, but each county has its own unique profile in terms of its mortality trajectory. So we are accounting for that in terms of population growth.
Thank you.
Yep. And I guess I should also say here that we are expecting further declines in fertility rate as well. This has just been happening where we see convergence across like the US. So even though right now Adams County has a much higher fertility rate than the whole of Colorado, you'll notice in the forecast period, the dotted line there, we are expecting more convergence over time, and that gap to narrow as well. So again, international migration really shifting what's happening here. Who comes into Adams County? Adams County Colorado has a really unique profile in terms of net migrants. It's a state that really attracts young workers. It's a cycle that is really tied to how the economy is doing and how job growth is doing. And this is extremely unique in terms of states. There's a joke that Cindy, my predecessor, used to always say, that when she said that the economic model that we use here at the State Demography Office, where we tie in job growth to population growth, when there's more job growth than the population is expected, then we adjust migration. We're the only state that does that. And if you tell this to a room of demographers that we do this, they would laugh you out of the room. But this is the unique situation that Colorado exists in, and it's evident in this profile, right? Here, on the x-axis is age, and on the y-axis is the persons, the migration rate. And you can see in Colorado, the blue, it is really tied to that young working age population. And Adams is even more so than that, right? It is very unique profile here in terms of helping the young age population in the growth within this population. This is a population that is not only likely to contribute to the labor force, but also probably have kids further down along the line as well, which leads to further population growth as well. When you have this, it's really indicative of future growth as well if you can maintain this age structure. And I will say that we are expecting this to maintain, but that isn't a guarantee, especially with population aging across the globe internationally, and mobility falling across the US as a whole, which I will get into more of it. And so this graph is showing Colorado's population by age. And so you can see we peak in that millennial relatively young working age population. But even when we break this down by counties, and I can show you a county by county comparison, Adams is even more exaggerated in that, really high in that 30 to 40 millennial population, disproportionately contributing to the density of the population, compared to other counties like Jefferson, which has a higher representation of 65 plus in that baby boomer generation. There doesn't have the sort of unique profile of Larimer, which has a large school age population, which is indicated in the high Gen X population, or not Gen X, Gen Z population within there, more similar to a county like Weld. In terms of its population structure. So getting into the specifics of Northglenn, there's a uniqueness in here. I just mentioned that Adams is a fast-growing county. It is unique in Colorado, which also is growing pretty fast. And here in Northglenn, we have a population 37,829, and as of 2024 office's estimate. And yet over the past 10 years, we've actually had negative population growth within the municipality, right? An annual growth rate of negative 0.1, right? And it's currently 7% of the county's population, but as the rest of the county continues to grow and Northglenn is sort of in that negative 0.1, basically zero, no growth period, it's making up a smaller and smaller portion of the county overall. And again, I can show a comparison point and say that that hasn't always been the case for Northglenn. Though it has historically been growing slower than Colorado as a whole, there are some outlier periods with high growth within the municipality at times where Colorado was much lower. But again, especially over the past 10 years, we've seen low growth, and everything below that dotted line is a year where Northglenn actually declined in population rather than growed, right? And so what's driving this when we're looking at population change over time? It's a couple of different things, but a proxy that we like to use is housing units. How has housing changed over time? This is the main mechanism that we use to update our population estimates over time. We get really good vital statistic data at the county level, at municipalities. It's a little bit more difficult to say who's moving in and out. We don't have a good federal data source on this, but housing ties very closely to this. So we use a method that attributes population growth and links it to housing. And of course, we look at other factors, but this is our main default mechanism, right? So number of housing units that we have, 14,880 within Northglenn, a vacancy rate of 4.5%, which is pretty on par for the state and county, and persons per household, 2.64, higher than the state, maybe a little bit around the county. I don't have that exact statistic, but definitely higher than the rest of the state. And when we look at housing growth over time, again, not a lot of housing growth, especially in the 2010 to 2020. We have one anomalous year where there is an increase in the housing units. And then in 2015, something that we don't see for a lot of municipalities is actually more demolitions than housing units coming in. Some of that may be over attribution to 2014 and some of the growth that happened in there and some adjustments. But up until 2020, we haven't seen a lot of growth in the number of housing units, which is going to put a constraint on just how many people that you can have within the city. I also want to couple this with the fact that persons per household, how many people on average live within a house, has been on the decline within Colorado. So that even to accommodate the same population, you need to have more housing than you had in the past because people are living in smaller households. Think of having less kids, people aging in place and then becoming empty nesters. There is more of that with the population aging. So that relationship is actually getting more skewed to needing more housing relative to population.
Great. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Back on slide 26, so you're saying that Northglenn's 10-year annual growth rate is below zero, it's negative. And is that because the baseline of Adams County is increasing relative to perhaps Northglenn's growth?
So the 10-year annual growth rate is just simply like saying what was the population in 2014 versus 2024. And then just, applying that. If it's zero, then you have the exact same population in 2014 that you did in 2024.
Okay.
So it has nothing to, it's not connected necessarily to what's happening outside of the fact that maybe other portions of the county you're migrating outside of, this municipality and going somewhere else.
Because we had Carl's Farm open, for example, so I was thinking, okay, there would be a bump. And if you're just saying it's a 10-year period between 2014 and 24, then maybe that it didn't count the Carl's Farm.
When was that?
Opened last year.
So if it was 2025, then that isn't reflected, and we know some population dynamics are rapidly shifting in 2025. So those will be updated in October. That's when we have our new estimates coming in, and so we're still collecting data on that process. We have about 2/3 a piece of the puzzle for that, but the last part, which I believe your office has already responded to, or the city of Northglenn has already responded to, is getting that housing unit and then some employment factor changes tied into there. So if that happened past June 1st of 2024, won't be reflected in this.
Gotcha. And then while I have the mic, I'll ask one other question.
Go ahead.
In regards to international migration, you mentioned Central America, South America, but would that also include refugees, say, from Southwest Asia,
Yes.
Afghanistan?
Yep. And we know that asylum populations have grown a lot. Asylum populations historically have made up a very small portion of international migration, and now they make up the overwhelming majority of that population. And it's broader than just Central and South America. That's just where the disproportionate number is.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Councilmember Sievers.
Thank you. This is more of a question for, I guess, probably staff or maybe council. What can we attribute 2014 to? Yeah, the growth in 2014. Is there
Why
a
the
development
housing
that
growth
we
changed
can?
so much?
Yeah. Does anyone know what that? It's a big difference. So I was just wondering if anyone knew in the room.
Well, it's always interesting to look at the measurement on the graph. Like it's a big difference, but it's just over 1.5%.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be one
The
big
scale
building.
is-
It could just be like one new housing
I was wondering
structure
if
which
anyone
came
could-
online during that.
You know.
we don't know this for sure, but Jason, Deputy City Manager Loveland, and I are discussing it. It's probably one of the 2 apartment complexes right south of City Hall.
If it's 1.5%, that's about 200 units, something on there that came online during that year. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, going back to my notes. And then, comparison point, how does this relate? Housing and population, these are the factors that we're going in, that we're looking at. These are tied into each other. And I should say this is the 10-year end period. So 2000 here indicates housing and population growth between 1990 and 2000, 2000 versus 2010. And again, between 2010 and 2020, in that yellow, just showing how small both housing and population growth was in that area. I know I'm not here to tell you if it's a supply side or a demand side issue, but those things are intimately linked with another. And we have seen some growth across Colorado as a whole. We've really seen housing development growth pick up post 2020. And that's also reflected, here in this graph where we have that post 2020 data, ignoring the COVID period. So we know that there has been increases within the municipality. That being said, we're still making up for the fact that most of this time we've seen population growth outpace housing growth, and that's going to put a strain just on how much growth you can accommodate in the future. Getting into some of the other statistics here, median age 34.8, a bit lower than Denver Metro, but about the same as the county as a whole. This is really young, not only for Colorado, but for the whole of the United States. So pretty interesting statistic here, young population. So births are probably still expected to contribute to population growth in the city itself. At the same time, looking at race ethnicity breakdowns, non-Hispanic white is the majority at 49%. But Hispanic is at 38%, and this is definitely greater than the state as a whole. Disproportionate representation of Hispanic, also to some degree multiracial, and Asian as well. I believe Asian is at 2.5% at the state and 4% here within the city as well. There's also a lot of variation across the city itself in terms of its distribution of its race and ethnicity. Here is a map, which there's an interactive component to this. If you would like to view, it's from the Census Dots program. They place 1 dot on the map for every individual, and they color it in by race. And so you can see just sort of the spatial distribution of populations by race ethnicity. And here you can get a breakdown of like where individuals are living within certain boundaries. And just showing here that, the representation of Hispanic and non-Hispanic whites and the large majority of them, but also like where they live, and also the central points of Asian populations and sort of that northwest portion. What's that border up there? Is that Westminster or closer to there? I'm not sure. Yeah, which is maybe unsurprising. And then Federal Heights is the largest percent Hispanic municipality, and so like it's not unsurprising that we see large Hispanic populations in that area as well, sort of reflecting the racial and ethnic distribution of the neighbors in the areas as well. Looking at Northglenn's population income, per capita income is at $38,453. That is quite a bit lower than the Denver metro area, which sits at about $60,408. This is based off of survey data, and there is some uncertainty there, but that uncertainty is reflected there. It's about plus or minus 2,000. So even in accounting for that uncertainty, that's a pretty big difference in there. And median household income, quite a bit higher, 84,000 plus or minus 5,000, indicative of the fact that we know people are living in multi-earner households, right? It's not just a single earner in the household, and there's actually a disproportionate amount of this within Northglenn compared to other areas. Percent below the poverty line is at 10.2, higher rate than Denver metro area at 8.5. That's probably within the statistical uncertainty. But throwing that statistic out there, nonetheless, that is maybe a little bit higher than what we're seeing. So where are people employed? This graph is showing both individuals who live in Northglenn in that light blue color and work in certain industries, but also individuals who live outside of Northglenn, but then work in that industry within the city limits, right? And disproportionately, what we're seeing for Northglenn is that people live here, but they work in some other location, right? It is a commuting area. We have negative 9,500 net commuters. What does that mean? There is 9,000 more people, about 10,000 more people rather, that work in other locations who live here than live in other locations and work here, right? Probably not a surprising statistic for a lot of you to hear. But what are the industries that they're in? Professional tech service is disproportionately the Denver metro area, and we see some of that within Northglenn. But the parts that make Northglenn more unique, or even though they might not be the highest, is looking at accommodation and food services, but also into healthcare and social assistance. What was the other one I was going to put? Oh, retail and retail trade as well. So this is a pretty unique profile in terms of the jobs of where people are at. What we tend to see is when you have disproportionately professional and tech services, those are the high income locations, right? These are the tech jobs that people have. And then for the other ones, and I'm happy to, I mean, feel free to take pictures, but I'm happy to share all of this in any way.
Yeah, that slide's missing.
Oh, yes, I did just update this. I'm sorry about that. And I will send that out. Send that out to people on there. Again, indicative here, there's a lot of things that we could take away from this, but we can look at it also in another angle. Instead of looking at sector, we can also look at this by where are people coming and going to. And again, we see this reflected in the higher light blue than dark blue, that most people are working someplace, living here and then working someplace else. Mostly Denver County and Adams County. Again, not very surprising, but maybe that magnitude is giving some indication on how big of a difference is than we have from people like coming in. It's also the kind of funds and money that people can expect in spending. We have way more people going during the day to other locations than coming from other locations here and during the day. There is some of it, we have net positive for Weld County. And I should clarify what Adams County means. It just means that they're in another location in Adams County and not within Northglenn itself. If that was confusing at all, I apologize.
We have a quick question from Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. So with the jobs data, is there a way to show on there people who are retired on Social Security, fixed income, something like that?
Not with this data source, and getting information about how much that population is actually making is extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. When we look at our primary data source for that population, it comes from the American Community Survey. And the numbers that are reflected there are all over the board and don't seem to give us the kind of signal that we think that we should be getting from this population. I will say, and thank you for that question, because that's a nice lead into this next graph, that we know age is intimately tied to spending, to taxes, and to income. So this is coming from a consumer expenditure survey, which is a great data source, which actually gives us this information. Unfortunately, it doesn't give it to us at the level of municipalities. It's representative of the national and some municipalities, but that's as far down as we can dig. It's just a much smaller survey that we can use, right? And so looking at average US income, we can see that it peaks at the 55 to 54 age and then starts to decline, and you can see like where that is distributed, right? And so what we think happens with that American Community Survey, just to answer your question, is that those Social Security and retirement incomes, dividends, those other things aren't actually well captured in that survey mechanism. It's still capturing the wages, which we think are just only the wages, which are just way too low for that population. So not a reliable source in that regard. When we look at spending, also similar thing. We know that spending peaks in 45 to 54, right? Taxes also peak in 45 to 54, both at the state and the federal level. But why are we talking about this? The main reason that we're talking about this is because we know that population is aging, and it's aging quite quickly, right? And as the population ages, we know that there's going to be less spending, there's going to be less tax base and lower incomes overall just simply from aging, right? Just simply from having a population that is more in the traditional retirement age of 65 plus. This is so important that we have, it's not just our office, but there's a statistic out there that is the retirement dependency age ratio, right? And it says, what is the ratio of individuals who are in traditional working age population, 25 to 54 in this case, compared to a traditional retirement age population, 65 plus? In the 90s, this was 5-1, right? But we have been trending down very quickly to just above 2 in 2024. And again, something that we expect to continue to decline over time. And to tie that back to the previous graph that we know about spending, that we know about taxes, that we know about income, it's just going to have an impact on how much money are we pulling in from all of these, and then how much people are utilizing services as well, right? We know that especially at 75 plus, utilization of particularly health services sees a big increase, and that all comes from, tax dollars for the most part, from one direction or another. Housing, I just want to make an aside really quick. How am I doing on time? 6:41, I think I have.
You're
Okay,
good.
okay. We're gonna wrap up in the next 10 minutes. Our office has also been looking at more into housing. Traditionally, we have an economic model, again, that we use to make population projections. However, we know that housing has become more and more of a constraint in terms of population growth than we've seen historically, and maybe a limiting factor moving forward, especially with relation to housing affordability. What I'm showing here is a graph from a publication from our office looking at the housing shortage, just sort of the hypothetical shortage that we have in the state of Colorado. If Colorado maintained a persons per household structure similar to what we saw in 2000, when things were more people were able to live in their own independent housing than what we're seeing today. If we use that as a statistic, in 2023, we were short 106,000 units in order to accommodate a kind of persons per household that we saw in 2000. You might say that's ludicrous. We are never going back to the way that things were in 2000, and I say that's fair. I think this is still indicative of the kind of change that we have seen over time and gives a sense of the magnitude on like what's happening. What you can see here is that we've also made some inroads in terms of this housing shortage. It peaked in 2019, and we have since been at a real boom in terms of housing development. At the same time, we see that housing affordability continues to be a big issue, and that actually housing affordability became worse even though we've developed more units than we have in the past, right? Part of this, why do we have a housing shortage? I mentioned it's because Colorado saw big population growth even during the housing bust post-2007, and we weren't developing housing units during that time. And where you see that gap between population and housing units, we're still making up for that fact, even though we started making inroads beginning in 2018, 2019, where we had more population or more housing growth than population growth. Again, at the same time, going back to that other point about affordability, Colorado has moved from the 2010s, where it was sort of middle of the pack housing affordability, to now being a certified outlier in terms of median home price, but this is also true for rental prices. Here I could put up another map of average rent, and it would reflect something similar, right? And so if you zoom in, Adams is showing up in the red here, but this is pretty common across Colorado as a whole. This isn't adjusting for the fact that incomes tend to be a bit higher within the state of Colorado, and we know it's a bit lower within the municipality. However, even after adjusting for that, Colorado still exists as an outlier in terms of affordability. There is the graph for rent, also included in here, relative percent of median, this is percentage of median income required to purchase a median home price. This is adjusting for the higher incomes. Apologies, not rent here. Adjusting for income in here. 48% of Colorado renters are cost burden as of 2024. This is the rent one, so also breaking this down. And again, share of renters with housing costs greater than 30% of household income. Adams is at greater than 50% of that as well. Is there a question? Sorry. Just saw a face. Okay. Yeah. And again, we can break this down, and we're doing so with our housing needs assessment. This isn't something that's published yet, but we are publishing this broken down by regions and by renters and owners, and this is an annual product that we will produce. It's not broken down to the level of municipality or even county, which is frustrating, but it's here to give a general idea of what's happening regionally across the state in terms of housing production and housing affordability. So looking forward, we've talked about population change also in the context of population forecast. We still have a relatively optimistic population forecast, and I would say that there is some serious downside risks that we need to consider when we're thinking about that optimism that we're forecasting. We know, and as I just mentioned, that housing affordability is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. The states that are continuing to see growth are doing well in that housing affordability category. Two of the biggest outliers are North and South Carolina. In terms of population growth, the relative housing affordability is really good. They also happen to be large players in that tech and professional services that historically Colorado has been very good at attracting individuals. And even though we see wages higher in the state of Colorado, you might take a pay cut if you're considering the fact that housing affordability or general affordability is much, much better in another state, even if your wages are a bit higher than the state of Colorado as well. At the same time, we know that there's greater competition for labor. I mentioned that traditional working age population is growing slower over time. So just simply for the fact that this population is growing slower relative to the whole population, you're going to have more competition for labor. At the same time, we also know that Colorado is both prone to natural disasters and water availability issues as well, although probably natural disasters in the form of fires. But we also know that other states may also succumb to this, and that might lead to population growth. That could be a push or pull factor leading on other sides. I spent a lot of time talking about national population growth and immigration policy, so I'm going to skip over that. Economic activity, historically, net migration has been tied into the business cycle. I think that there is some serious consideration that might break for Colorado if housing affordability doesn't make a shift in there. Even though that we're seeing some job growth and some economic success, if we don't have the accompanying housing affordability, we might not see the same kind of population growth that we've seen in the past, simply because that acts as a limiting factor in terms of who can move to certain locations. Ties in again to remote and hybrid work. I won't say too much there. I think we all know the potential impacts in one way or another there. And AI is also something that we're still unsure on what direction this is going to happen. I think that the evidence is still out. It's unclear on which direction this is going to lead population changes over time. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, that all of our data is for 2024, but about a month ago, the Bureau just released their updates for 2025, and that doesn't even reflect the county yet. So we only have this information at the state level, but there were some interesting statistics that came out of this that are shifting our way of thinking about population for growth for Colorado in a new trajectory. One, maybe the big highlight, is that Colorado passed 6 million people, and that's a big deal. That's a year faster than what we thought. But it's not because more people were moving in 2025 than in previous years. It was because they thought that there was an undercount in the international migration in previous years. So actually, there were more international migrants within Colorado in 2023 and 2024. And at the same time, into 2025, we saw more people, as I mentioned prior, leaving the state than coming in, negative 12,000 domestic migration. This is the first time that we've seen this since the oil bust of Colorado in the 80s, 1989, the CPR article is pointing out. So this is a big shift. And we knew that we were going to see declines. This was more of a decline than what we were expecting. And as an aside, when we were forecasting this lower net migration moving forward, we were met with a lot of concerned questions on why are you doing this? We're seeing population growth happening. And it was from looking at this data, breaking it down by domestic and international, looking at the economic and job trends, and seeing that not really going any forward, that we felt confident to do a lower number. And I'm really glad we did, because it was actually, even lower than what we estimated during this time. I'm just got to throw a shout out to my office of just being able to track those trends and staying on top of the game and what is happening here. At the same time, international migration is at 15,000. You may have seen a Wall Street Journal article that came out a couple of days ago that said that 2025 was the first year in recorded data history from the Bureau that more people left the US than came in. It's still really unclear on whether that actually played out. That's based on some forecasts and not complete data. That is still yet to be seen. But it does give you a sense of the direction of where things are going for international migration. That number will be much, much lower for Colorado next year. There's no doubt about that. I can't say if it's going to be negative, but it's not going to be at 15,000. It was 60,000 or 50,000 the year before, and now it's at 15,000, and will continue to be lower. And for counties that, like Adams, that have historically depended on this kind of migration for population growth, that's also going to be another one. The flip side to this, births are up substantially. I mentioned this as well. Most births since 2017. That is very interesting. And what we're seeing is the greatest increase among 30 to 39-year-olds. In some ways, that isn't surprising. The reason that we saw big declines in Colorado's fertility rate was because of long-acting reversible contraceptives widespread beginning in 2007, and the biggest fertility declines were amongst 15 to 24-year-olds. What we think we're seeing now is some of that family planning come into fruition in terms of people not intending to have kids at those younger ages, but now having kids at the ages that they intended, and you're seeing that increase in that population as well, evidenced by the fact that births among 15 to 19-year-olds are continuing to fall over as well. Last interesting statistic here is Colorado is growing slower than the US as a whole. Again, this is pretty unique. We've grown faster than the US as a whole, and even being at a period where we're growing at the same rate was pretty uncharted territory for some time. So the fact that we're now growing slower is giving us some, what pause in terms of what can we expect in the trajectory moving forward. I think some of this is going to come in terms of lower population projections. We lowered it quite a bit last year. I think there's some more lowering that's coming moving forward, but also thinking about how this is going to play out at which counties, at which municipalities is going to vary depending on how have they been growing in the past. In some ways, I think that that Northglenn is in a good position because of its relatively youngness, high births. At the same time, it's still dependent on that international migration and growth in the metro area as a whole, which we've seen some of the biggest hits moving forward.
Thank you. We have a question from Councilmember Burns.
Great, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, this is so interesting. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's super cool. From that last slide with the births being up, I am this statistic essentially.
Same.
And shout out IUDs, right? So I'm interested to see too, though, what is going to happen, because I don't know if you've seen this among your friends, but with the childcare affordability crisis, and I'm an out-of-state migrant. I grew up on the East Coast and I moved here. My parents are still back there. Now that I have young kids, I'm what am I doing halfway across the country? And I've seen so many of my friends pack up and leave with their kids to go back to where they came from.
Thank you so much for telling that anecdote, because it ties into a great data point. Where are people going when they leave Colorado? For the most part, it's Arizona, California, Colorado, or Texas. And it's because that's where most people came from, right? And if you're running the calculus of just okay, I can afford to live in Denver when I'm in my 20s and I only have myself to take care of, that's one thing. But now that I'm having the kids, just like you said, that affordability calculus has completely changed. And I don't think it's any surprise that we're losing people to these states. It's people who weren't born here but came here, and now they're going back, It's not, we're not losing them. They're not leaving from Colorado to North and South Carolina. It's just that that's where people are now, is the new attractive spot. Yeah, totally. Yep.
Councilmember Sievers.
Nope.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one thing to note, I think let's see, what was I trying to reference? That's the same issue we have, workers to retirees that transition. That's the whole Social Security issue with if no one ever raises the cap, taxable cap.
Yep.
But when Social Security was first rolled out, it was something like 16 to 1 workers to retirees. Now it's 2.5 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
So without raising the cap, that's why we keep running a deficit and taking from the the Social Security Trust Fund, which is one reason why we're going to run out by we're going to cut benefits by 2033 if we don't change things. And then, yeah, I felt, I moved here at 35, so I felt like, but I could see myself, 15, 20 years moving away too.
Yeah.
So I
And
feel like
and actually, yeah, we've seen declines across the board, but where we're seeing net out migration, more people leaving than coming in, is disproportionate to that population 45 and older. There is some variability in that data, and that it still comes from survey data as well, but that is also not uncommon, people retiring in other locations or, yeah.
And secondarily, I've been here for 3+ years, and my increase in my rent has gone up 27% in 3 years. So
And I wish I had the graph that showed how much incomes have increased, but it is not the same amount. And that, yeah, we have that in the housing shortage report, as well as like growth since 2000 of housing costs and incomes. And yeah, that gap is widening over time. So yeah, what you're feeling is happening across the whole of Colorado.
Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one thing that I just wanted to square with you is going back to slide 24, I think it is. I've heard anecdotally from people in Adams County, for example, saying that one of the fastest population segments or demographic segments that's growing is the over 60. And I just wanted to make sure that is indeed a fact.
Yep, that is. Fastest growing is 65 plus is how we usually break that down, but if I broke it by 60 plus, it's still going to be growing faster. And even though the county is made up of less of those individuals relative to other counties, it is still the fastest growing.
Gotcha. And I'm not expecting you to answer this question, but I know that you brief a lot of municipalities and officials and things of that nature. I'm just kind of curious as to what kind of conversations you're hearing about concerns for housing for senior folk, or for that matter, bringing senior people back into the workforce. I wonder if you have any anecdotes that you can share.
I don't have any anecdotes. I can share with you afterwards a few groups that are specifically targeting this, that are specifically thinking about growing in the 65 plus population and knowing that this is going to be such a big thing within the state of Colorado, and brainstorming about how can we be more accommodating in the workforce and other opportunities in housing in order to make this happen in the right way. Unfortunately, most of our meetings are short in time, so I only get to be on the presenting side and don't get to listen in as often as I would like to, so I can't tell you on the nature of that, but I can definitely get you linked on some of those groups.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm just sitting here and I'm having an epiphany. I mean, you're talking about the lack of childcare, and so I'm just trying to connect the dots and figure out, is there a way perhaps maybe that seniors can get into the business of looking after kids and things of that nature. But
so I had mentioned that these I'm going to throw, I'm not going anywhere with this, but I'm just going to throw out something else that's interesting that I forgot to, oh no, did I go too far and I can't go back? Oh, we're done. I mentioned that, oh, I can go back. Oh, okay.
There you go.
The births are up substantially. Most births since 2017, it was an increase of almost 5% year over year, which is really wild. This didn't happen in anywhere else in the US. This happened in Colorado. When we first got those numbers, we were certain that this was going to be like a national impact, a recovery from COVID. It wasn't. And we're still trying to figure out what happened. So if you have any ideas on why all of a sudden people
I think it's the rollout of universal pre-K.
Universal pre-K, interesting.
Because it kicked in last year.
Okay.
Which I think, not that I was like planning a lot of stuff, but like the fact that it was a factor, I think for a lot of like my friends, like, we're all in our, mid-30s having kids, and it's after this sort of like toe dipping into the childcare situation is expanding. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. We thought at first when it was national that it was increased coverage of IVF, but again, not really explaining why we're seeing a difference in Colorado and not other locations. We thought maybe family was like the other one, and we know that the new Colorado coverage Family Leave Program, FAMLI. And I know that CDLE and CDPHE are doing some joint studies to look at the impact there, but hadn't thought about the universal pre-K one, so that gives us another one as well to look at. So yeah.
Do we have any more questions or comments for our guest? Thank you. This was invaluable information. I know our city staff had already seen it and they really appreciated it. Thank you for taking some time to be with us this evening to share it.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Have a
Hope to
good
see you all
night.
soon. Thank you for having me.
All right, up next is the, oh geez, I'm going to try it.
Go for it.
Sesquicentennial celebration banners. Yeah, thanks. I like applause. All right, City Manager Guyer will present this item to council.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Internally, we're having some fun with the title of the celebration. Right now, Director Peterson, I think, says it the fastest.
I bet. I'm not
So
surprised.
might need to have some sort of universal competition at some point. So we are here tonight to respond to council's request to bring back an outline of a proposal for installing banners in celebration of the 250 and 150 anniversaries this year. So before you this evening, we have some banner designs to share with you, but before we get to that slide, currently we have 57 banner locations that we've utilized in the past. As part of this presentation this evening, we're proposing that we move forward with 100 banner locations, certainly negotiable. If council feels that that's too many, then we can scale back the overall budget that's proposed in the amount of $30,000. Or if you want to scale up, we can have that discussion as well. Staff landed at 100 banners in order to address some areas that we believe are opportunities to provide visual enhancement and to fill in some gaps, so to speak. That would include Memorial Parkway. One of the suggestions is to place banners along Memorial Parkway, which is something we have not done in the past, which I think will be a really nice visual enhancement. And then Washington Street, which definitely would provide visual enhancement along that roadway, which is very long. And currently and in the past, we don't really have anything along that corridor. So try to visualize that as you're thinking about feedback for us. This proposal does involve buying all new hardware, and so that's built in the costs that are included in your packet. And then the other piece for visual enhancement for consideration is staff did some additional research, and we are recommending that we change the size of the banners to 24 by 48. In the past, we've used banners that are 14 by 48, and the 24 by 40 is more of an industry standard. I know this map is small. The black pin drops are the recommended banner locations. Certainly, if you want, I can email out this link to this interactive map after the meeting if you really want to zoom in. But the essence of it is there's banner placements on the north sides of roadways as well as the south sides to balance out the placement of the banners. We have banners that go as far as West 112th Avenue over by Northwest Open Space, keeping on that corridor just east of York Street, north of Fox Run subdivision, down along 104th in the area of Marketplace and Melody Drive, as well as east along 104th, closer to Washington Street. So we don't have pin drops filled in necessarily on South Washington, south of 112th, but then you see where we've had banners previously north of 112th, and then certainly the primary corridor that we've had is along Community Center Drive. So proposed costs, and this is really an estimate based on thanks to Candace Marchese with Amanda's team, Director Peterson's team, excuse me. She did the legwork in reaching out to multiple vendors to get an idea of what actual costs would look like. Printing of banners, two-sided, 100 of those banners is approximately $7,000. New hardware, we'd be looking at $11,000. Installation, if we were to outsource that, would be approximately $12,000 for an overall range of $30,000. And certainly it goes without saying that if we could bring it in lower than $30,000, that would be staff's objective. Something to know beyond installation of banners this year, if that's what council provides direction on this evening, is any type of replacement of banners in the future would require additional funding. One set of banners, about $12,000, which would be, it says $7,000 equipment. It probably should be $7,000 printing of the banners, and then $5,000 for installation. So every time we were to swap out banners with new designs, we need to do installation. So that gives you a ballpark. I did note that my hope is that the communications assessment can help inform what this effort can look like moving forward, and we'll put together a package request unless council tells me differently for the 2027 budget. We did have a package request included in the 2026 budget. It was not prioritized, and the amount of that package request was $35,000, and that was not prioritized due to other important needs that were more urgent to fund. The other piece to know that's related to this overall topic is development of a banner program policy. We currently do not have a program policy, and it's something that we really need to look at. We're going to touch a little bit on the request by the Daughters of American Revolution this evening, certainly in an effort to respond to that request. If council wanted to make an exception, we can. However, in consultation with Corey Hoffman, our city attorney, and just knowing the work that we do around our digital bulletin board, we really do need to develop a policy in order to know what the boundaries are, what we say yes to, what we say no to, First Amendment, free speech, all of those pieces. So now I'm going to turn it over to our Senior Public Communications Specialist, John Eisel, to walk you through the designs he's put together.
Thank you, City Council. So the goal behind the different designs that you see tonight are to tie together the 250, 150 celebration. I'm not even going to try to say the whole world. With the what's going on with the city of Northglenn. The first one on the far left, the 1776, 1876, 2026, obviously referencing the major dates involved with the 250, 150 celebration, 1776, 1876, and then the 2026 today. The second one has the Colorado sea from the state flag, kind of highlighted in the middle of the sea of stars from the American flag. The third and the fourth one, what I was going for is like to tie iconic locations in the state and in the city together. In the middle one is the nation's capital along with the Colorado State Capitol. And then in the fourth one is actually Northglenn Centennial Bell, the bell that's located in Centennial Park, along with the Liberty Bell located in Philadelphia. And then in the fifth one was going a little bit differently, trying to tie in the song America the Beautiful, which was actually inspired by Pikes Peak. So I used the one of the lines from America the Beautiful along with a stock photo from Pikes Peak. And then from there, so we have the same kind of designs going on for, oh, how do I go back? Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. So along the bottom, you can see different designs for the bottom third of each of the banners. On this set one, it has the Northglenn 250-150 variation of the city logo prominent throughout, but then America 250 on the left, and then the state's 250-150 logo on the right side to kind of balance it out. On the second one, the city's 250-150 logo standing all by itself kind of makes it stand out a little more predominant. And plus, within the logo itself, you have the 250-150 reference already. So hopefully you don't need the direct reference in the America 250-150 from here. It kind of speaks for itself in the singular logo here. And then in the final set, just trying to do something a little bit different. On some of them, it has the Colorado logo by itself. In some places, it has the America 250 or Colorado logo within the images itself or up above within the images, just because it seemed like a good, it fit well and it worked well within the design as a whole.
We are looking for council feedback on the designs.
Okay. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, these are super cool. I love these. I would offer a Frankensteining, because of course I am, because I get to be the client this time, you know what I mean? So I really love the juxtaposition of the Capitol buildings, and I think this option is the coolest with the two logos up top to represent, so people realize that's the U.S. Capitol and our Capitol, because people may never have been there, they may not know what it looks like. I think that's cool. But otherwise, I like the first set with the white space being filled by the logos.
So this set or?
I like this set overall, yes.
Okay.
But I like option 3 of the middle banner with the logos bigger and up higher at the top next to the Capitol.
Oh, so you're mixing your,
Yeah, I'm Frankensteining it.
got it. That's what you meant by that. I was like, what is
Yeah.
she talking about?
Very classic client disposition I'm putting on right now. I rarely get to be this person.
So I do know we have questions about feedback on locations as well. Let's talk about the banners first, and then we'll switch back to that. Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry, I got into this.
No, it's okay. Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to ask the question, is the America 250 logo, is that the standard logo that was developed for nationally for the, okay.
It is.
The reason why I asked this question, and I'm interested in receiving kind of feedback from my colleagues, is when I traveled to South America, that is part of America. And so, I wonder if the Latina community might take umbrage with the fact that, America is not only just the United States of America, it's the entire Western Hemisphere. So that's the one thing that I think is a little bit of a concern that I want to broach just for conversation. For me personally, I don't have a dog in that fight, but I wanted to just elevate that for conversation. If you were to ask me what my preference would be, I would say set to either the Liberty Bell or the Purple Mountain Majesty. However, the text on a white background of the clouds, it kind of makes it hard to read, so maybe you go with a darker color font like purple or something like that.
And I think just to clarify your statement, I think it would be a set of 5, not just 2. Like, you don't have to pick your favorite 2. I believe it's the set of 5. Is that correct?
Okay, gotcha. I was
Yes.
trying to figure out if, you wanted us to kind of pick one out of the 5. Check.
No,
Okay.
I think
So in other words, pick
it's
a set.
all of them. Yeah.
Okay, feels like a Chinese menu. and I'm going to get grief for that, I'm sure. I like set number 2. Thank
I'm
you.
going to jump in really quickly just with a clarification, because one of the questions I had is, I see we have 5 images, but they're back to back. So why do we not have an even number of images so we compare them? Because they're 2-sided banners, is that correct? So are you just going to alternate the pairing of them? Or are they the same on each side? Is that correct? Okay, that was just a clarification. I was like, oh, I thought they were paired up. But they're not. So like if it has numbers on it, it has numbers on both sides, same image. Got it. That's so helpful. Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Going back a little bit, just cost-wise, will the hardware, will that be reusable?
Yes.
Okay, for like other banners and things like that?
Unless something breaks, then we
Right.
have to replace it caused by it. All of this hardware will be higher quality, sturdy hardware, so unless we get a major windstorm or something happens, we shouldn't need to replace equipment.
Okay. Excellent. I think I like set number 1.
Councilmember Roper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question about the last one. Would it be possible for us to add quotes around that? And I think it's Catherine Lee Bates who wrote it. I think it's appropriate that we add that. Any 4th grader in the state of Colorado will call you on that.
Especially seniors.
Because those words came directly from her. She wrote the song. And I think it's important that we give her that credit,
Okay.
especially because
So
she's a woman.
Can I just clarify, addition of quotes and addition of name?
Yep.
Is what you're recommending, Councilmember Roper?
That is a great point. I agree. Councilmember Severs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the hard work, and I think, I love the capital and the bell split down the middle. It's a great idea. I was also gonna recommend Frankenstein. Banner set 3, I really like the capital with the emblems on the top, and I guess I was also gonna say the Purple Mountains, but maybe depending on adding in the songwriter, I guess, if that changes it. Otherwise, I would just say set 1. Thanks.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a couple of questions. Are we getting any kind of grant money from the state or the feds to do the Sesquiset, the blah, blah, blah stuff?
Not for banners.
Okay, so it can't be used for banner. Okay, I was just wondering if that was linked into that. For the event, okay. And then,
The event.
We may, but yeah.
We applied for a grant, but we
Oh.
did not receive it.
okay.
Unless something's changed since the last couple weeks.
Sorry. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have submitted a grant request through Adams County Open Space for a mini grant associated with the Sesquicentennial. We will not hear about that until end of April.
But that's not for banners.
It is not for banners.
Okay,
It's
that's
for
what I
for
was-
the event itself.
I was just trying to clarify that. I personally like set 2 because it's cleaner. I don't know that we need all the other stuff, and especially since this is on a banner and people are driving by. But I do like, and this one, the middle one, I think it was Councilmember Burns who first mentioned that, with the symbols on the top. So, I mean, I would vote for set 2, but adding those 2, even though I'm with Councilmember Kondo on the U.S. versus America thing, but if that's what we got. So that would be my choice. And then I'm fine also with Councilmember Roper's suggestions to add, to attribute the lines to the author. So I don't know, does that make sense?
Councilmember Leidy?
Thank you. I have a few questions and comments. One, just teaching CMAS prep right now. Seriously, we've got to add our quotes. My kids would come at me. They'd be like, Miss Maddie, oh my gosh. So that, I did also have a question. Are we set on that quote specifically? No? Okay.
It's recommended. If council feels differently, you can recommend something else. or
Okay, I was
say,
just-
"Come back
I was just
to us with
wondering."
something else.
Okay, cool. I mean, no one else mentioned it. It was an interesting little chunk. I did have a question just about the location while I was looking. this map completely cut off Fox Run. So that was one question that I wanted to make sure that we didn't, like, I think maybe it has some at the top, close to 112th, but we also have a lot of residents that are near South Park and near 104th, and so I was like, oh no, we're completely gone. Like, my house is not even on this map at all. So I did have a question about that and just the random locations of, like, the chunk of Malley and Washington, and then the random chunk of the Northwest open space, and then the random chunk by the Burger King. Just, those are random places to put things. I just had a question about that.
I'll jump in. Couple of things. One, the dots that are on there currently are just the locations where we've had banners in the past. So that's why we've suggested increasing that number. Those additional 40 banners or so are not indicated on this map at all. So there's still opportunity to select alternate locations. And it doesn't need to be all, because we would put up new hardware if we move forward with this. It doesn't need to be these exact spots either. Fox Run, we don't have any right-of-way on 104th. So I know that feels really strange because we drive in off of 104th to get into Fox Run, but it's not until you actually are into the neighborhood on Fox Run Parkway until the roadway itself and the light fixtures are in the city of Northglenn. So those are all in Thornton on 104th there. So that's why the map doesn't.
No, I know. I'm just, there's a full chunk of Northglenn missing from this map. That's why I was like, I understand that 104th right there is definitely Thornton. There's a whole chunk of that you would think is my neighborhood that is not, but it's all left out. So I was just wondering if that was, Fox Run Parkway is a very long loop that you could just make it look like Community Drive right there. It would look great.
So yes, we can look at those locations where council would like to see additional banners. Again, this map is just where they've been historically, not where they're currently proposed.
I'm going to jump on that really quickly just because Carl's Farm is also not on the map. And so when we look at locations, I was going to have a separate conversation, but I'll just start there. There's definitely a concentration. And I guess I had a question. Do these go on the same, they probably don't. Do they go on the same poles as the Christmas lights or the holiday lights?
In some cases, yes, they can go on the same poles. When we've had them doubled on poles, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, we've had the holiday fixture above and the banner below.
Oh, okay. So that brings up so many questions. How long do we think we're going to have them up? Are we going to keep them up through December 31st of 2026?
I think we were anticipating, based on council's direction, leaving the sesquicentennial ones up for the entire year. And then depending on what the direction is for 2027 and beyond, every time we change them would have a cost. So I think that's a council conversation for the 2027 budget process. Is that something you would like to see changed more often, or is it an annual update?
I think we should talk about that too. And I mean, I will say at this point, you're just showing off how fast you say it. You keep saying it as fast as you can. And I'm like, really? All right. I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing. It's very fancy. No, I'm just teasing you. So, because some people weren't here, we got a lot of positive feedback when we did banners during COVID. And 2020, we had some beautiful, we support our residents banners up all over the place. And I don't see the same locations because we had some over by Croak Reservoir. And so, I mean, I don't want us to get into the weeds of we get to pick where you put them. I think I think we should be mindful about including new neighborhoods like Carl's Farm. I think a couple, if they were spread, I get what you're saying about Fox Run on 104th, but if they went in a little deeper, maybe one by Central Park or a splattering of them or something by Stonehawker or maybe something different near Stonehawker that's a little more aesthetically Stonehawker, I don't know. And then thinking about like Huron doesn't seem to have a ton. just on that south side. And then there's just like a chunk on 104th that maybe could be spread out like our holiday lights are, that would take it all the way across. They really are beautiful, so I'm going to get to that. I would just say let's maybe spread them out as best we can and not forget some neighborhoods. I love the idea of including Washington more, but maybe that stretch between 104th and 112th, like I think maybe some work could be done there, but I don't think it's up to me to decide, put one here, don't put one there. Banner-wise, I do, just real quick, Mayor Pro Tem said she loves them, didn't have a favorite, she just is in full support of it, so we'll talk through that. I so appreciate Councilmember Condo's comment, even though it was not our logo. I do think it's fair. And if anybody saw the Super Bowl, we all learned a lesson, a geography lesson about what America is, and it's a full continent, not the United States. And so because whoever designed this one made a mistake there, it makes it not my favorite. And so I had already aesthetically was drawn to set 2 because it is clean. It is about Northglenn. It still honors the 250, 150. It's still celebrating all the things. But it is also true that the more we put on these banners, the messier they're going to look from afar. If I'm driving by, I don't want to see all these little symbols everywhere. And so like set 3 is not appealing to me, especially if there's just one off to the side and it's this little teeny symbol that people aren't going to see really fast. And I think set 1, it makes it look cluttered. This is not a criticism of your work because you did beautiful work. So I really do think set 2 is just the cleanest, crispest, really noticeable. The Northglenn logo at the bottom really pops, but those matched images are just gorgeous. And I appreciate the comment about citing the author and putting quotes around it, just because, again, it is just probably more proper and she's accurate. Every fourth grader studies Colorado history.
Yes.
And so that is something that they will notice. So all that said, if I go back, I had a couple questions about the $5,000 installation was on the beyond 2026. Is that staff time cost, or are we paying somebody else to install them?
That is the anticipated cost for a contractor to install those. If we were to do that with staff time for holiday lights, it takes us 2 to 3 weeks to put those up. So if we were to do that in-house, it would be 2 to 3 weeks of staff time that's coming off of other responsibilities.
Okay. I was just wondering, it made me, this price point and breakdown made me wonder if we need to revisit. I love the holiday lights. I don't want them to go away. But do we need to at least elevate the cost and the time that it takes to get them up and down? We haven't really talked about it since we bought new fixtures. So it's just sort of kind of been included in the budget, but I wasn't sure if all council members understood the cost there. This just re-elevated it for me. I love this idea. I think they're beautiful. I think we should go forward with it. And my vote is number 2. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got thoughts. So my only thing about not putting the national and the state level logos on things is like, if I was driving by and I saw the Northglenn logo, I didn't know what that was. And we are participating in the state activities, right? Like, we are part of this larger group. We should, I don't know. I mean, unless we want to do our own thing. That, to me, like, that's what this says, is like, this option says we're doing our own thing. And I don't know if that's entirely true. Because it's not our 250th or our 150th birthday, right? And so just from like a brand perspective, and this is like a professional opinion, we should at least include the state logo.
The state one that they made has the
Yes.
150 and the 250.
The little state, yeah, the Colorado one.
Yeah.
I think we should at least actively participate in our, with our fellow municipalities and everything that's going on in the state from a brand identity, strictly a brand, this is a professional opinion. I think it should all flow and look nice together, because otherwise it feels like we're doing our own thing in spite of or in direct competition with the state. Otherwise, it looks cohesive with everybody else, is my thought on this. And again, if I'm just a person driving in Northglenn and I just see the Northglenn logo 250-150, I was like, oh, is it Northglenn's birthday? What is that? You know what I mean? That is my professional hat on that matter. But I totally see your criticisms, Councilmember Kondo, of the federal logo, but we have no control over that brand identity. But again, I think we should at least play nice with the state, is my opinion.
I don't think we're trying not to play nice, but where would you put it? Does it look okay offset by itself?
My suggestion would be option 2, but then take that center one, the capital split, and keep the logo, and then just do that one. Print option 3 of that center piece, and then I think option 2 for the rest. If you guys, I think that's a happy medium.
Nice compromise. I can do that. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Leidy.
Sorry, I wanted to agree. Well, and I was also looking at for purple. I like this quote. As I read it more, I'm like, it's a very interesting quote. Fruited plain. What is a fruited plain? I'm going to have to Google all of these things, because apparently I have not been in 4th grade for a while. But I like that image with the Colorado 250, 150. I feel like it just fits right there for some reason. Is there a way to do this, or are we just telling you random things?
The way that the banners were designed, if you wanted to, quote unquote, Frankenstein them, it'll work fine.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't just like, okay, these are all of our ideas, and you're like, yeah, so now I have to start all over again. Thanks for that.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, I like what Councilmember Burns had to say, but I also wanted to double check, so thank you for that.
So I hear what you're saying about this particular set with the 5th one, because it does fit there. I'm just wondering if it will, if we add the proper citation.
I remove my previous statement because I forgot that we have to, add the quotes, please.
Okay. Councilmember Roper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And
Just to jump in, we can make whatever, if you want to use just for Purple Mountain Majesties, whatever you guys want to use along with quotation marks, citation, we can make it work. That's not an issue.
Go ahead.
thank you, Madam Mayor. And I did not say this the first time, and I apologize. Thank you. This is lovely. I do appreciate it. And again, not to be nitpicky, but I also think there's an exclamation point after fruited plains. The fruited plains! Exclamation point.
Is it plains or
Plain. Sorry,
I
plain.
bet we could find a way to look that up.
And then I just want to clarify for any of our residents, I think it's important that I think it is important that we recognize the women that were a part of our state history. And I don't think it's discrimination to only call out women. I believe a lot of times women are in marginalized groups, and as part of the Colorado State standards for schools, it is our duty to recognize those marginalized groups. After all, she wrote this song and she didn't even have the right to vote yet. And for nearly 45 years, women did not have the right to vote in Colorado. So I think this is a good way to honor her voice, not necessarily because she's a woman, but because of the wonderful things she did.
So I was not privy to the conversations in Castle Rock. Thank you, by the way. Stand up when you say it. Yes, so good. The images that I shared with council from Castle Rock, I just wanted to point out, it says USA 250. I think that's interesting. So they did not use that logo. They created their own. They did use the state logo at the top. But as far as acknowledging that it's the USA that's turning 250. I think that's interesting. And I like that Castle Rock did that. So thank you again, Councilmember Kondo, for elevating that. And I think if we wanted to keep it, maybe we put USA on it because it looks like it doesn't hurt anybody to change it. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, John, thank you very much. Never said thanks for kind of designing the Northglenn logo. I think it looks great.
It's so pretty.
I would just advocate for keeping the America 250. So
You like it?
I do like it, yeah.
Really?
I like the
Okay.
design, so.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. I just made the comment about the America 250 and even the Colorado symbol. They aren't giving us any money to do this, so I don't think we feel obligated. I don't feel obligated to shout them out. So I wouldn't mind having it off, but I'm also okay with leaving it as it is. I mean, if it's not like a copyrighted thing, we could do USA 2 where it says America and the 250 red, white, and blue ribbon just like that. I don't know, but I'm okay either way on that. I just don't want it all over the place. So a couple of, like it does make sense with the 2 capitals, but otherwise I'm still on like the mayor and a couple of other of us have mentioned the set 2.
Okay, so maybe, Councilmember Severs, gonna weigh in?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will second Councilmember Nowicki. I get it. I totally get it. And Lord knows I have my complaints about everything right now, but it's not something I would pick a battle in. Especially since I really like the split set 3, the split capital. I really think that's appropriate. But
Well, so I think the final proposal, or the one proposal on the table, was set 2, except for the capital image, which would be pulled from set 3, and then the continuing in set 2, Purple Mountain Majesties, double checking the quote for punctuation and spelling, adding a quote, and adding the author, so that we are attributing for all the wonderful things that Councilmember Roper just shared. How do we feel about that? Okay, Councilmember Leidy, you want to add a piece?
No, thank you. Actually, I'm good.
Okay. All right, and then staff will look at locations and kind of spread them out a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Next up.
The next piece is Mayor Pro Tem had shared previously that she had been contacted by a representative from the Daughters of American Revolution, a local chapter. And thanks to Michael Stricker, he re-engaged with the individual that had reached out to Mayor Pro Tem and previously to former Director Diana Wilson. They are proposing that we include their banner, which is shown here. This is pretty specific to what they're hoping for. And they propose 4 locations around what was shared was E.B. Rains Park area as well as 104th. They'll pay for the banners, and we would recommend to them that they use the same printer and everything, so quality and same size is, sizing is consistent. And again, the only piece that staff wants to caution with this request is we don't currently have a banner policy. So this would, if council desires to include the request by the Daughters of American Revolution, that it would be an exception, and that we don't intend, our proposal is not to open it up to multiple groups. Council also has the ability to say no if you do not want to move forward with this request. So I'll stop there and answer any questions, and Michael Stricker can help if you have any questions.
Okay. I just wanted to add that Mayor Pro Tem is a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and she was in support of this item. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make sure that it's clear that we aren't going to be doing this for everybody. 4 locations is, I'm sure, fine with this. But my question or concern is the dates, because are we going to be leaving it up all year? And then is there a way we could modify that to just take the dates off, the July 4th thing off, or just, I don't know, just say July 4th or something? Because that does seem a little odd to have it limited like that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so when I spoke to them, the dates are the only thing that they're willing to adjust. The rest of the banner is as proposed, and they're very, very specific about this look, and they also were very specific about that's the only logo that can go on there. So we can't include the Northglenn logo or any of the other logos.
Yeah, well, I probably wouldn't want to, because then it makes it look like we're endorsing a specific organization. So that would be my only concern, is to either remove or just say July 4th, or I'm not sure, but those 2 dates seem a little odd to me. I mean, I guess I'm okay with this. It doesn't excite me necessarily, but it's okay.
On the idea of dates, will these come down sooner? Like, will these come down after the 4th of July if they go up now?
They can. It's really up to the city to decide that. So
Okay.
I think going back to what Director Peterson shared a few minutes ago, the intent is to keep them up, the banners up all year. But if we want to do that for the city banners and then take these ones down, or whatever that looks like, we have flexibility to.
Do they have a specific request for location?
They generally said EB Rains Park area, and then 104th, I believe, on the west side. Is that correct? Like Croak, 104th corridor area.
It was more the corridor as opposed to anywhere specific.
Okay. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is a very generous opportunity that they, would pay for the banners for us, and I thank them so much for that. I just have a lot of concerns about accepting this without a formal policy in place. I know our city attorney is not here, but I hear him in my head talking about this, and I think that's my only reservation is I feel like I would rather have us have a formal policy in place before we take outside. Just after the last banner situation, I'm also having some trauma that I'm reliving right now. So that was a joke, but thank you, everybody. That's just I don't know. I just feel like we should have set boundaries, rules in place before we dive in again and doing any kind of endorsing on banners. That's just my trepidation at the moment.
You want to weigh in again?
Well, I mean, I share all the same concerns. Mayor Pro Tem isn't here to kind of, give her side of it, but I do have some concerns that it, even without our logo on it, does imply that we are, supporting this particular organization, and then what we have, we have to do that with everybody or what, I don't know. So I do have some, I mean, could we, do we have time to talk about a banner policy and then bring this back, or?
Potentially, I could probably get something pulled together by visualizing the tentative future agendas in my mind by March 23rd meeting, or it would be the first part of April would be the soonest.
And does that give you enough time to make a decision and make the banners and all that kind of stuff?
Certainly we could move forward with council direction on the rest of the banners. Go ahead and get the hardware ordered, printing of the banners, that sort of thing, and we can do research and bring back a policy as soon as we can. Right now, the March 16th meeting is pretty full, and I'm actually going to take an item off of that agenda, move it to March 23rd. So March 23rd, or that first meeting, well, it'll be the second meeting in April because the first meeting is dedicated to the Youth Awards program.
Well, and it is interesting. I appreciate Councilmember Goff's noting of the dates. I mean, if this organization wanted to really highlight July 4th of 2026 as this anniversary or birthday. Perhaps we could tee them up to do that and agree to have them up for a month in the summer. It says they're going to pay for the banners. Are they paying for the hardware and the installation, or is that on us?
We didn't specifically talk about the hardware. Their assumption, they've been doing this in some neighboring cities as well. I think the assumption is they have money available, whatever is requested, they can do. I, in the conversation, specifically asked about banners, didn't clarify hardware.
Okay. Do you know which cities they're putting them up in?
I know specifically they've had them in Westminster for
Okay.
sure. And I could easily get a list from them as to others. I know that they've been talking to a few folks. I think it was Broomfield too.
Okay. Councilmember Severs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also support Councilmember Goff's criticism about the dates. I wish we could just go in and change some of the fonts. Yes, that's the one. The fonts kind of look a little generic and boring, but you know, if they feel important about it, I don't feel, since Mayor Pro Tem feels strongly about it, I don't have any reason to say no. My criticism is just about the look, but that's okay. Thank you.
Well, but I think to Councilmember Burns' point, without a banner policy, we are opening ourselves up to questions and possibly concerns. And so if there's any way that we could pull that together in time, I would say in time for June, for them to be out, and I'm good with 4. But I think we need to talk about the banner policy first. Councilmember Leidy?
I just, on the point of the formal banner policy, correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be putting two things together in my brain. Did we have a time where, I don't know if it was places, like local businesses that we had banners up on Community Center Drive, and there was one that was like Deeds of the Flesh or something like that? One of my volleyball players just always pointed it out to me, and she was like, that is gross and creepy. Would that fall under a formal banner policy? Would that be something that then we could say like, hey, if you do put a banner up, you can't put these specific words up, or you can't put gore or things like that? Is that something that would fall under that?
Yes, great question, Councilmember Leidy. The banner policy would address what we are able to regulate as a city while not infringing on First Amendment right. It would be our banner program, so we have the ability to regulate. However, in the absence of a program and in the absence of a policy, we open ourselves up to risk. So if, by way of example, council were to say, yes, city manager guy, or go ahead and move forward tonight, and then tomorrow I get a request from an organization that perhaps, organization or business, that council may not be inclined to approve or support, regardless of the words or whatever the content is, we would have a more difficult time saying no to that request.
Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think just to this whole banner program, so because my hometown has banners, and the city fully runs and operates them. I guess we're a borough, technically. Shout out Pennsylvania, being a commonwealth. And we used, growing up, the banners were used to promote things like 4th of July, Veterans Day, honoring the veterans who live in our borough, very specific city things. And as I'm thinking through this banner program, I feel like I'd rather have I feel like it should belong to us versus being doled out as an advertisement. Because again, and then who are we going to advertise for? All of that kind of stuff can come in. I just feel like I think when we all envisioned these, it was very Northglenn Pride and like Northglenn proud and like celebrating our city. And I can just feel this being a very slippery slope into partnerships and like who owns what banners, and it's starting to feel messy. Or I can foresee it becoming messy potentially. With Councilmember Leidy's example that I had forgotten, I had buried deep down with the banner program, and you reminded me. So that's just my 2 cents, and like, I feel like we're doing it for our residents, and yeah, I don't know, it should be ours.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's start with a banner policy.
Okay. So we'll put the Daughters of American Revolution request on hold. We'll communicate with them. I will work on bringing back a proposed banner policy to you. The banner program will be separate part of 2027 budget. Is that good? Sure. Okay.
Yes.
Great. And then the overarching question, I hear council consensus on the proposed budget, and we will relook at the locations and try to spread locations out based on the feedback that we heard tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I have a question for
Sure.
you, City Manager Geyer. So the next thing is, are there any other items before council before I adjourn tonight's meeting? Is it an okay opportunity to bring up something that we need council consensus on?
Certainly, there are no other items for tonight's meeting.
Councilmember Kondo, I think we should just do it now while we're all together.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Okay. So last week I attended the North Area Transit Association meeting. It was quite an interesting conversation. It was the annual kind of strategic plan and setting the course for the next year, few years out. Also attending was Adams County Commissioner Duran-Mullica, as well as Henson. One of the things that is a concern that I would like to receive council consensus on, and I can forward this email after I make my comments, is that we have a person who is currently up for consideration for CDOT District 4. She is presently the executive director for Colorado Sweep. Elise Jones, I believe it is. And she has made some commentary specifically to Julie Duran-Mullica that just doesn't quite sit very well in terms of what the needs are for highway expansion in Adams County. For example, I think because Ms. Jones is really having this, in her real day job, a mandate to try and drive for use of mass transit, it seems like it's also spilling over, or potentially could spill over into what policy decisions she might make on CDOT. But what she told Julie anecdotally is that, well, gee, you know, I don't think we should expand or add another lane on Interstate 270. You know, people can just take the bus or do the Mustang. But what she fails to realize is that, you know, 270 is already a logjam. So even if you take a bus, you're not going to go anywhere faster than anybody else in a car as a single passenger. So I would like to receive council consensus, whether yes or no, as to whether we would want to, as a city, and Julie has already approached a number of other cities as well in the North Metro area, Thornton, Westy, Commerce City, et cetera, whether we would want to do a letter to the Colorado Senate. The Senate basically has to confirm her, recommending that she not be confirmed for that position. And I know there's a lot in that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can I add a couple things first, real fast? So Director Mullica reached out to me as well, or Commissioner, I guess, Mullica reached out to me as well. And we discussed, well, first of all, one of the reasons I take her recommendation so seriously is she has always been very transportation focused. So the whole time she served on the Northglenn City Council, that was her thing, right? She's very, very focused on transportation. She has put in countless hours with the I-25 and 270 corridor work with NADA. Like, this is definitely something that she's passionate about. I don't want it to be perceived that we, are disparaging Elise Jones. It is strictly on the conflict of interest between her role with CDOT and her actual job as the executive director of the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. So there's a conflict of interest here, and so Adams County has drafted a letter to the governor's office opposing this nomination, which Councilmember Kondo will share with everyone so you can take a review of it. The ask is that you check your email and read the draft, and then email Heather if you would like Northglenn to take a similar stance and draft a similar letter. And if Heather receives 5 council members that approve of that, then she will move forward and take care of that. There is a timely issue, which is why I wanted Councilmember Kondo to bring it up tonight, is to call your attention to the fact that you're going to get this email tonight with this request, because this is an imminent decision. Councilmember Goff.
So my question just was, what, the district you're talking about, is that something that she's appointed by the governor then for that? And it's our area? Just our I'm not sure it's clear in my mind, but probably our residents don't quite get it either, so.
Well, basically, District 4 does encompass Northglenn.
Okay.
The CDOT District 4, I want to be clear, it's not RTD. CDOT District 4 does include Northglenn. I confirmed that with Julie. And I don't know if it's appointed by the governor and then confirmed by the Senate. I don't really know the answer to that. All I know is that, again, what the mayor just kind of thumbnailed, this kind of conflict of interest seems to make it a little bit of a concern, that it's something that is worth highlighting and perhaps recommending that another person that is a little bit more removed should be appointed into that seat.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious if they decide not to approve of this person, what kind of length, is it a lengthy process to pick somebody else and we would have no representation for a while, or? I just was sort of curious about.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I guess I could take that as a lookup, get back to Julie, and then get back with you independently or anybody else who's interested in knowing, what's next after that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering to know if we had answers to those questions, and then I'll look at the letter and we'll get back to you on that.
Gotcha.
So, thank you.
So I did forward that email. Please get back directly with Heather. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Oh, Councilmember Burns.
Sorry, maybe the email coming later will answer some of my questions. I just have a lot of thoughts about this and would like to be able to look up who this person is and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Vibes. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.